All right, so I'm back. No week 5 review. I probably should have did one, but it's a little too late now. But you know what happens when we're lazy? We like to do mock drafts. So this is mainly the order that we're in right now after week 5. You know, like Carolina, Las Vegas, Pittsburgh, Detroit, Washington, Houston are all in the top 6 and stuff. But we're gonna go ahead and just like get into this mock draft. Not a lot's changed in college football, but the draft or the mock draft from last time has definitely changed. So for Carolina, obviously Baker Mayfield, Sam Darnold, both on technical 1-year contracts with their 5th-year options. PJ Walker is going to start some games, but this is a quarterback. I've always preferred C.J. Stroud over Bryce Young. Bryce Young, just because Bryce Young is around 5'10", 190 pounds, just like an extremely small prospect, and we don't really see Alabama offensive lines in the NFL. So I don't know how good he's going to be under NFL pressure and stuff, but I think he's still going to be a good prospect. He's a really good prospect. I think C.J. Stroud's like bigger size is going to help him and probably make him the first overall pick. Even though I think that Will Anderson is definitely the best prospect in this draft by far, which I'm going to end up picking him second because Will Anderson is a monster. I still think C.J. Stroud has a better chance of going number 1 overall because of the quarterback needy teams in this area, such as maybe Washington, Houston, Atlanta, and Carolina. But Pittsburgh at 3, offensive tackle is not a big need, or quarterback is not a big need. Obviously, choosing Kenny Pickett. So we're looking more as interior defensive line if you want to help out DJ Watt, or you help to shore up the offensive tackle position. Skronsky out of Northwestern is probably the best offensive lineman. I've seen him go as high as 1 or first overall. And he's just another clean prospect out of Northwestern, such as someone like Rashawn Slater, who was drafted 7th over. Yeah, 7th. No, he was 11th overall by the Chargers in 2021. Anyways, Detroit next. I gotta be honest, I do not think that quarterback is their biggest need. We're seeing Jared Goff play at a pretty good level. I think he has 11 touchdowns to 4 interceptions, if I'm not mistaken. I don't think Bryce Young is their biggest need. I think building the team around Jared Goff and then maybe getting a quarterback would be the good thing. So I think the best prospect in this area would be Jalen Carter, obviously, and the Lions also have a weak defensive line. We see like Aiden Hutchinson is the only one, and Aiden Hutchinson barely generates pressure, and he's the only one that really does that on the defensive line, and they're so horrendous against the run as well that they need somebody like Jalen Carter who has great pass rushing ability and great run defending ability. Washington Commanders, you need a quarterback. This is likely going to be a new regime. I don't think Riverboat Ron comes back for another year, and it's interesting to think because Carson Wentz, I think he has 2 more years left in his deal, but it's also Carson Wentz, and then your backup's Taylor Heineke. So, unfortunate for Bryce Young. He's going to have to be cursed to Washington. Obviously, Washington has not had good luck with quarterbacks, but Houston is up next, and I would think that Houston would be pissed that Bryce Young is not there at 6 overall. But if looking at their need, they have 2 back-to-back picks, or not 2 back-to-back picks. They have a pick right after the Atlanta. And I can see them going 2 different ways, but with how good this quarterback class could be, I think, and Davis Mills obviously has not been very good this year, Will Levis could be the pick at 6. Will Levis, he's like, people do compare him to guys like Josh Allen, and also like Zach Wilson and stuff like that. So I could see this rise going out or going in draft time. Anyways, Atlanta, they need to generate pressure, and I think Miles Murphy has been really helping Clemson. Miles Murphy and Brian Brees both been very implemental to Clemson's defense, and Clemson's look a lot better, especially with DJ Uiagalelei's comeback season. Last year he just sucked, flat out sucked. But anyways, for the Houston Texans, you draft a franchise quarterback, you immediately draft a franchise receiver. Jackson Smith-Njigba is legit. I wouldn't say he's Jamar Chase-like. I'd say he's more built like Devontae Smith, and he has like that route running prowess, and he's not the best like aggressive catch, but he's more built like Devontae Smith, even though people do compare him to Jamar Chase a lot. Philly is at 9 because of the Saints. They traded one of their first-round picks last year, moved back a lot, and got a first-round pick this year, and that was a horrible move by the Saints. And now they have the 9th overall pick right now. So I think secondary is a question because I don't know if James Bradbury comes back, and you don't know how long Darius Slay plays with his elite ability. And wide receiver, I don't think wide receiver is the biggest need. You just traded a first round pick. I would look more for probably, well, I guess safety, but there's not really safety. There's not going to be safeties going at 9. But I would be looking towards maybe a dynamic quarterback such as Kellen Ringo. Kellen Ringo has been completely locked down, and he's been great for Georgia. And if you don't re-sign James Bradbury, you can go and pick him at 9. For the Seattle Seahawks, interesting because Geno Smith is somehow playing at an elite level right now. He's the most efficient quarterback in the NFL. And also, these needs are question marks because linebacker, you already got Jordan Brooks, and at cornerback, you have Tariq Woolen and Kobe Bryant, who are both playing at great levels as well. And wide receiver, they don't like. I would assume that Geno Smith does not play at the level he's been playing at for an entire season. I would expect somewhat of a collapse after week 10. And getting a guy like Anthony Richardson, that would be pretty nice. And now, with that being said, they signed DK Metcalf. They have Tyler Lockett still. They could draft a wide receiver with Jordan Addison, but I think that their offensive line does need some help, especially with Dwayne Brown, a perennial Pro Bowl tackle that you lost last year, who is now on the Jets. I think you could replace him with Paris Johnson Jr. and then have a good stalwart left tackle for a long time. Now with Arizona, this is secondary. Joey Porter Jr. or Cam Smith. I always debate which one is better between Joey Porter and Cam Smith, and also Eli Ricks could also be in like that. This is like, for me, it's like Joey Porter and Cam Smith are technically 2A, 2B, because Kellen Ringo is both above them. And then I would put Eli Ricks in that, maybe in the mix. And I think Carl Phillips, they might put him a little higher, but I have to check him out more after the offseason. But any one of those would be good. I think the Cardinals really do need that secondary help. So I'm going to pick one of them, and I'll just go with Joey Porter. So the Detroit Lions come back up at 13. Obviously, went Jalen Carter at 4th. Wide receiver could be interesting if they want to go with Jordan Addison. You'd have Amon-Ra, you'd have Jameson Williams, and then you would have Jordan Addison. Or you could go with. They could go with 2 options, I think. I think they could go with Jordan Addison, or they can go with Brian Brees and have a really good defensive line, or they could help boost the secondary, which is shoddy. But I think that having 2 stalwart defensive linemen mixed with Aiden Hutchinson, that immediately improves your defense so much. Cincinnati is super low. I do not expect them to be in this spot at all. And I see Chicago at 17. That's probably not going to happen. But if Cincinnati was here, their offensive line has kind of been terrible this year, allowing one of the most amount of sacks. But, I mean, who are you really going to replace on that offensive line? Jonah Williams Yeah, he's been terrible, but I think, and then Lyle Collins has not been good either. Alex Kappa, I guess, is the best offensive lineman on that team, which is not great. But I don't know if they want to invest another. Like, they've invested so many high picks on offensive linemen, and it's just not worked out as well as they wanted to. But I'm going to have to do it. If their offensive line continues to be this bad, Broderick Jones, slide him in at left tackle and hope, I guess, pray for the best. Jonah Williams is on his 5th year, and if they choose to resign him or not. New England Patriots, Jordan Addison falls right into your lap just because I haven't wanted to go wide receiver happy so far, even though that is going to be completely different as the draft actually happens. Wide receiver will go way earlier than you expect and falls into New England's lap. This really helps Mac Jones. Now, at this point, some of you may be thinking why Bijan Robinson hasn't went. It's because running backs don't go early on. I know that Bijan Robinson is a complete back, 3-down back, whatever you want to say. Yeah, he's really good, but like running backs really do not go that high. But he is gonna be a pick coming up. Jacksonville Jaguars. I think Keyshawn Butte, Quentin Johnson, by the way, has risen up boards a lot more. Even though I like Keyshawn Butte as a better prospect, Quentin Johnson has definitely made a name for himself in college football, and that's what I'm gonna pick. I think I'm gonna pick Quentin Johnson over Keyshawn Butte, even though that might not happen in real life. Quentin Johnson at TCU has been lighting it up. And with my next pick, that's what I'm going to go with. Keyshawn Butte hopefully helps Chicago. I think offensive line right now is a bigger need, but not the greatest offensive line class other than Skoranek and Paris Johnson. And then Broderick Jones. For the Indianapolis Colts, it's 2 guys who I think. Hendon Hooker is playing very well out of Tennessee. I think he still has another year of eligibility, though. So it's 2 guys I'm really liking for the Colts. I could see KJ Jefferson or I could see Jaron Hall. I think Jaron Hall, I think people project him better, and I don't actually see... Oh, Grayson McCall is really low. This is an interesting quarterback class because a lot of these guys just kind of entered the mix. Guys like Michael Penix Jr., guys like DJ Ungale, Grayson McCall, Cameron Rising. A lot of these guys do have another year of eligibility, but we might not see a lot of them use it. Also Hendon Hooker. I already mentioned him before, Tyler Van Dyke. But I'm going to go with Jaron Hall. The main thing for the Colts is that Matt Ryan has stunk, and they need to find a long-term option at quarterback. They've been rotating ever since Andrew Luck, and you just can't do that every year. Miami Dolphins, Bijan Robinson, so easily. Miami would be scary with Bijan Robinson because the offense is already so dynamic with Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. And yes, they did have lost 2 games to the Bengals and the Jets, mainly because Tua Tagovailoa has been out. And, yeah. Tampa Bay Buccaneers, another team that I'd like to see go quarterback. And I'm going to go with Hendon Hooker, playing at a very high level at Tennessee. Tennessee's ranked 6th right now, going up against Alabama, their biggest. And that's going to be the biggest indicator whether Hendon Hooker goes in the first round or not. I think his game against Alabama this Saturday will determine that. That's what analysts, that's what sports people, that's what I'm going to look at when we look at, or when people, I'll include myself in that because I'd like to do draft scouting. Well, that's the film we're going to look at when we want to determine if Hendon Hooker either goes in the first round or stays in college. For the Chargers, they did just lose Rashawn Slater to a bicep injury. I think he just tore his bicep. I would like to see them find another option at wide receiver. They have guys Jalen Guyton, Joshua Palmer, Mike Williams, and Keenan Allen. But Keenan Allen is over the turn of 30. Mike Williams is 28, and if they want to go with a guy like Josh Downs, who fits their scheme very well, can play in the slot, that would be interesting. But I think their biggest need probably right now is left tackle, and we're gonna go with Jalen Duncan. The New York Jets, their biggest, I guess that you could say their biggest need is defensive line, only because the rotation that the Jets have been trying to implement has not been working. But I think if they played their star players more, Jermaine Johnson went out with an ankle injury. If they played Quentin Williams more, John Franklin Myers, Bryce Huff, if they played their main impact edge rushers and defensive linemen more, they would generate a lot more pressure. So even though it says defensive lineman and edge rusher, that is not their biggest need. Their biggest need is safety. And I'm going to go with Antonio Johnson. Their cover 3 and like cover 2 Seattle or cover 3 Seattle like scheme, it's pretty easy to see pre-snap. They play, if you just anytime they'll just we saw with the Dolphins a lot last game. If you watch the film, it was a motion and it was an easy diagnosis of a cover 3, or a cover 3 or a cover 2. Even though they did come away with the big win there, safety is their biggest need. They were getting blown over the top in the first 3 games, especially against teams like the Bengals and the Ravens. All right, so reports have come out that Aaron Rodgers likely will retire, and I would like to think that the second Aaron Rodgers retires, they go and draft a wide receiver. Joshua Downs out of North Carolina. That'd be hilarious. But yeah, I've heard some reports that Aaron Rodgers might retire this year, and you obviously have Jordan Love on the bench, who has not really shown you a lot, but you did draft him with the 26th overall pick in 2020. Hopefully, you can get some help for him because Christian Watson, Romeo Doubs have looked. Those 2 rookies have looked good, but no, then it was not up to the standard of Devontae Adams, and Aaron Rodgers has looked shoddy this year. Anyways, Baltimore Ravens. Their receiver core is trash. Rashad Bateman, I do really like Rashad Bateman, but he does not get enough. I guess it's just a target kind of issue. He just doesn't really get targeted a lot. A lot of his production has been coming off of big plays, and yeah, but I still think receiver is their biggest need. Even though I think Michael Mayer would be fun on that offense, I think that receiver is still the biggest need. Cedric Tillman, or they could go. The Ravens always love to pick defense, and they could go with a guy like Trenton Simpson or Noah Sewell since Patrick Queen. Patrick Queen has not been playing good. I remember when he was picked 28th overall, and Jordan Brooks was picked 1 ahead of him. I remember everybody was like, how could you pick Jordan Brooks over Patrick Queen? I remember that very vividly because I was one of the people that said that. Tennessee. Ooh, yeah. Okay. I was thinking about it for a second. Michael Mayer is going to go to the Tennessee Titans. Austin Hooper has just gotten 0 targets there, and they do have Malik Willis in their back pocket, and rookie quarterbacks tend to do what? They target tight ends, and Michael Mayer is very obviously the best tight end in this class. So seeing him go in the first round is probably a likelihood, even though he's not up to the Kyle Pitts standard, or he's not an upper echelon, elite, different alien type of tight end, but he's a very, very solid blocking and receiving tight end. Giants up next, 26. Don't think they make the play. I don't think the Giants end up winning the division. I think Dallas and Philly both eclipse that. But if they could make the playoffs with the 7th seed, it would not be a shock to me at all. We've seen worse teams like the Pittsburgh Steelers last year make the playoffs, and that could be the Giants this year. They could be an 8-9 team, and they could make the playoffs. And with that, I would like to see them draft Cam Smith. The Giants secondary, the Giants secondary has been playing at a very good level, but it is not sustainable at all. They've signed 1-year veterans, and they've signed journeymen to their team. I would like to see them have or try to draft and develop one lockdown cornerback. And that brings me to Dallas. Dallas, their defense has been playing very, very extremely well. It's been carrying them. I know Cooper Rush is 5-0 as a starter, and he's 4-0 this year, but that defense is carrying them. And we're going to continue to draft that if you're Dallas. Trenton Simpson out of Clemson, another Clemson defensive player that's just been killing it this year. That's Clemson has also been carried by their defense a lot, and he's going to Dallas. With the Kansas City Chiefs, they do say that wide receiver is the biggest need. I genuinely do not think. I think that edge rusher, and I'm going to go with Isaiah Folsky. I think that edge rusher is the biggest need because Frank Clark is at a replaceable level, and they did pick who they picked last year. Oh, they picked an edge rusher last year. They picked the edge rusher out of Purdue. I'm forgetting his name, but he has not generated any pressure. And they're playing Chris Jones on the edge, and he's not an edge rusher. Oh, George Karlaftis. I found it. George Karlaftis. They picked George Karlaftis, who has not been producing. So I think they could pick another edge rusher. Maybe move to a 3-3 or a 3-4. Minnesota. This is pretty easily cornerback. I think potentially they could go with linebacker, but I think Eric Kendricks right now is fine holding up that. But I think Carl Phillips III, Eli Ricks is very close, but I think Eli Ricks is more of a slot guy than Carl Phillips out of Utah. Buffalo, interior offensive lineman. Cyrus Torrence. I mean, these guys, these all three are pretty much in the same degree. Cyrus Torrence is higher ranked. I'll just go with the mock draft database simulator. I'll just go with what they recommend. Philadelphia Eagles back up. They're projected to make the Super Bowl, which I don't think the Eagles. It's an interesting conversation. Yes, they are 5-0, but is their team good enough? And we have not seen their team in the playoffs, even though they're the most balanced overall team. Easily Noah Smith. Noah Smith is crazy out of Georgia. I think he goes a lot higher than this too. I think Noah Smith goes a lot higher than pick 31, potentially ahead of Isaiah Folsky, and potentially ahead of, I forgot who picked earlier. Yeah, really like him out of Georgia. And then Vegas, I always forget which pick this is. This isn't it's not Miami. Yeah, I have no idea. Oh, no, I have no idea. But anyways, Vegas is back up on the board, and their offensive line has just been so horrendous that we're gonna go with Antoine Harrison. Nice little mock draft. Just like, obviously the draft. I think the draft order is more important before the actual draft ends up starting. I think once the offseason starts and the draft is set, that's when we start looking at which players really go ahead. But this is a rough draft, as you could say. This is a rough draft of what it could look like. Obviously, players like that it didn't mention. Actually, go back. Obviously, some players you should look out for, guys that are not in the first round, and guys that I do not address in some of these mock drafts. Guys like Marvin Mims out of Oklahoma. I'm just gonna name off some names just so you hearing them before the draft will help you in the draft process. If you just hear the name before, guys that I'm potentially looking at as going in the first round. Drew Sanders out of Arkansas, Henry Tuyotu, who I not mentioning, and there's a lot in quarterback. This quarterback class is interesting because it can change it can change in a heartbeat other than C.J. Stroud and Bryce Young. And then for tight end, Darnell Washington is crazy out of Georgia, but probably a late round sleeper. Defensive line, guys like Where is he? Is he listed as an edge rusher? Yeah. BJ Ojolari, who I didn't draft. Andre Carter II, who had 16.5 sacks out of Army. He could potentially sneak into the first round. He's a crazy athlete and a run defender. Reminds me a lot of he's like if Trayvon Walker was an Army player. He's like Trayvon Walker if he went to Army, and that'd be crazy if he had got drafted. That's just a little hiccup. And then Brandon Joseph, I've seen sneaking into the first round a lot. Jordan Battle, Brandon Bretch, Malachi Moore, the trio safety from Alabama. These are just some players that you should probably look out for in the upcoming draft. But that's going to do it for this video. Let me know your thoughts about this mock draft. Let me know some of the players you think could go in the first round. Let me know some players you want your team to target. And I'll see you in the next video.